Hello, beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while you deepen in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, which are wonderful. And if you've never had a session with me before, they are 60-minute sessions that take place over the phone. I call in the angels. There's heartfelt conversation and exploration. I draw angel cards. I will channel for you. And the intention is to help you deepen in your own divine guidance and your team of angels. And if you feel guided to learn more or to schedule a session, I invite you to visit my website at illuminatingsouls.com. I also offer soul mentoring, which provides for more consistent support as you move through a time of growth or transition in life, and also some awesome classes that take place over Zoom. So lots of ways we can connect, again, at my website, illuminatingsouls.com, or my Facebook page of the same name. But for now, the angels and I are here to help you rest and hopefully fall asleep. As many of you know, I have been using sleep podcasts for years, and they help me create a transition between my waking consciousness and that shift into sleep. And I love them. I have a lot about my life that I enjoy and love. And that said, I also love to go to bed at night. I love that feeling of knowing that another day is behind me. You know, that I've done what I needed to do or could do in that moment. And now I get to let go. I get to drift off. And I love crawling in bed at the end of a day. I don't know, it feels decadent. Feels luxurious. It feels like a warm invitation. So for me, I go to bed early. I usually start drifting off somewhere around 7:30, and usually by 8 or 8:30, I'm in bed. My body starts quieting down, and I find that my attention begins to wander. And when that happens, I crawl in bed and snuggle on in, cozy on up, as I invite you to do. And I put in my earbuds and I pick a sleep podcast to listen to. And there are a lot of different sleep podcasts out there. Actually, in this episode, I'm going to share with you some of the podcasts I listen to so you can get a better sense of the genre. And so I invite you to utilize this podcast in whatever way best serves you. I know that some of you do use it to go to sleep. I also know others of you listen to it during the day when you're looking for some companionship. So if so, I'm delighted to keep you company. However you're guided to use this podcast, this broadcast is filled with love for you. It's one of my favorite things about the work that I do is the quality of love that flows through from the angels. It is expansive and generous and light-filled. And there is a lot of love here for you. The other thing that I have found is this frequency of love from the angels is highly compatible with sleep and helping us come into states of deep relaxation. One of my first awarenesses of this experience of higher frequencies actually happened when I was fortunate enough to go attend several days of teachings with the Dalai Lama when he was in Los Angeles in 2006. So by this time I had gone through USM, I had studied angel therapy practitioner training, and I had had many exalted spiritual experiences that were just transformative and amazing. And it was a series of interesting circumstances that enabled me to get tickets to these days of teachings with the Dalai Lama. And so I attended with my husband Wes and two of our friends. And what was so interesting is when other monks were teaching, I was wide awake and paying attention. And then the Dalai Lama would teach. And I found that whenever he started teaching, I would fall asleep. And I was so frustrated with myself. And I didn't understand what was happening until I reflected this to my friend Judy, who you've likely heard me talk about before. And she said it's because his energy field is so high. It's easiest for you to receive it while you're asleep. And I thought that was so interesting. And you know what? He also did an evening for the greater public. He did a talk that week at the Universal Amphitheater. And so there were thousands of people there. And I found I was wide awake for his whole talk. And I recognized it's because he was using a different frequency almost to engage with the greater public than he was when he was in the smaller group teachings. And I had a similar experience when I was first introduced to the work of Abraham Hicks. So I came to know them through The Secret. I think a lot of us opened up to the work of their channeling through the documentary The Secret, if you remember that. And there was a video, a DVD, I suppose, shows you how old I am. There was a DVD put out about Abraham Hicks, and the first part of it were Jerry and Esther Hicks talking about their journey with Abraham. And I was wide awake because I was so fascinated. And then Esther started channeling Abraham, and I couldn't keep my eyes opened. I just zonked out. And I thought, oh, it's because their energy's so high. So I really became aware of the benefit of sometimes coming into higher energy fields and how that can correlate to sleep, because these higher frequencies are filled with so much light and beautiful vibration that sometimes the easiest way for us to calibrate with these higher energies is to drift off. And I will also add that sometimes when I'm channeling Josephus and the Wisdom Council, that's the group of guides that I channel. When I used to do angel circles for larger groups, they would sometimes say, if you get sleepy, it's okay. it's not because we are boring. They have a good sense of humor. So while I do intentionally try to keep this podcast kind of boring, I also endeavor to bring in, well, not me. It's not me who's bringing in the energy. It's the angels. We endeavor to bring in these beautiful frequencies of light that will help you drift off. That it's okay for your waking mind to drift off while your body deepens in its state of relaxation as you breathe in the love that is flowing to you now. See, while this love is traveling through my heart, it more importantly is flowing through the heart of the angels. And your angels know you. They know you. They love you. And they are grateful for this opportunity to shine even more love upon you, especially as you are in a state of awareness where you are opening and welcoming in this love. Your act of willingness to receive helps to amplify the love that is streaming to you. So in this moment, we are in a beautiful expanse of collaboration and co-creation with your beautiful team of angels. And I'm going to go ahead and invite them in. They're already here, as you know, but I love the ritual of inviting them in on purpose. So I invite you, if your eyes aren't closed yet, to just close them. Unless you're driving a car, then please keep them open. And take a deep breath in as we call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And beautiful angels on high, I invite you to join us here, and I rejoice in this opportunity to dance in this amplified energy field of love, of healing, of goodness, and of light. Angels, I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves upon waves of love in service to each of our beloved's highest and best good. Angels, I ask that you help to lift that which feels like a burden, that you help us to heal our hearts and our spirits and our minds so that we can easily come into deeper alignment with the promise of our brighter tomorrows. Please fill our hearts with inspiration, with lightness of spirit, with divine grace, and with also the energy for divine right action to help bring in a greater path of ease. Help us to co-create miracles in our lives and in the greater world. Help our ripples of light and love flow into the world where they can be of service to the highest and best good. And angels, we are so deeply grateful for your presence here. And I give thanks of gratitude for each of the beloveds who hears this broadcast. So, dear ones, to those of you who hear this message right now, I thank God for the gift of you. because you are a blessing in this world. You are precious. You carry magic within you. Truly, this world is better because you are here. And right now, the angels are filling the room you are in with a soft pink light that is creating a cocoon of vibrant love for you. And this love is rippling to all you love and to all that love you. So there's an exponential wave of love that is rippling across your timeline right now. The angels are orchestrating this on your behalf. So allow this love to ripple to your past, to your present, and to your future, knowing that in this moment, this love is not bound by time nor space. Just breathe in. And with your permission, the angels will help you connect more deeply with your authentic self, with the brightness of your spirit, so that you open to your own sense of vitality, amplifying your sense of well-being, bringing in that beautiful vibration of home, of goodness, and of the love we speak so often about. So just take a breath in and release. And you are so deeply loved. Truly you are. I feel the beauty of your heart, and I am so grateful for you. If I have one request for you, it is that you not be so hard on yourself. You are doing so much better than you know. And there is support for you here. You are worthy of goodness. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of miracles. And you are worthy of good rest. Yes, the kind of rest that restores, that rejuvenates, that helps you shift body, mind, and spirit so that you can awaken with a brighter sense of wellness and presence. So again, just giving yourself permission to drift off. And this episode is going to run about an hour or so, and the angels and I will be keeping you company. And even when the episode ends, the angels will continue to be with you. And if you are still looking for more rambles from my heart, you can always queue up another episode. There are a lot available now, and it is truly my honor and blessing to keep you company. So while you rest, I am going to ramble my way into a story for you. So tonight I thought I would wander through my playlist of sleep podcasts that I listen to. So I don't know, is it too weird to make a sleep podcast about sleep podcasts? I was considering doing this because for many of you, you might be new to sleep podcasts and you might be wondering what else is out there. Because I publish 2 episodes a week and maybe you want more than just those 2. So I thought I would take you on my journey of which podcasts I listen to. So I have to start off with the first one I ever started listening to, which is Sleep With Me by Andrew Ackerman. I want to say that he started publishing this somewhere around 2014. But I don't think I started listening until he was already about a year or two into the podcast. I discovered it through, I think, the charts on iTunes. I was looking on the podcast charts and it showed up. And I was really intrigued by the idea of a podcast designed to put you to sleep. I didn't know what it would be. What could it do? What could it be to help me fall asleep? And he's really good at explaining how to listen to his podcast. He usually starts with an introduction, which runs about 10 or 12 minutes. And then he starts with whatever the content of the episode will be. So when I first started listening to him, he was publishing 3 episodes a week, which is astounding, an astounding amount of content. I can say this now because I am publishing 2 episodes a week. He was doing 3. And he was also, I don't know if he was working full-time or part-time at that time, and also raising a young daughter. So I don't know how he did this. And he has several different kinds of episodes that he does and that he did at the time. He would have episodes where he would do recaps of different shows. So over the years, he did Game of Thrones, which I didn't listen to those episodes because I'm not a Games of Thrones person. He's also done more recently recaps of the Great British Bake Off, which I have listened to because I like that show. He's doing recaps of Doctor Who. He's also done recaps of Star Trek: The Next Generation, The Good Place. And I don't know how many of his episodes are available for free now. I know a lot of them are, but at some point, some of his library went behind a paywall for patrons. And I suppose I can talk to you about what that means because many podcasts use this model. So perhaps you have heard of Patreon before. Patreon is a platform that allows artists and different content creators to create a platform by which people can financially support them, like a patron would, a patron of the arts. And so for a nominal amount, I think for Sleep With Me, it's about $5 a month. You then get access to all of the episodes as well as other content. So it's a very common way for podcasters to seek financial support for their broadcasts. So some of his episodes are available to patrons only, but still, if you've never listened to his podcast, I think he must have at least 500 episodes available for free. He has a lot of content. Some of the favorite kinds of episodes that he does include his personal essays that definitely have inspired me with this podcast, where he talks about different experiences he had in his life. And I love those when he does his personal essays. I'm fascinated by them. He also used to do episodes where he would go through the Trader Joe's Fearless Flyer. For those of you outside of the US, Trader Joe's is a unique style grocery store we have here in the US, and they create this, quarterly flyer promotional piece where they talk about their different products. And so he would flip through the Fearless flyer and talk about which products sounded good to him and which ones he's tried and what he doesn't like. And I don't know, I love those episodes because it feels like I'm walking through Trader Joe's with a friend. And it feels intimate and wonderfully ordinary, right? I don't have to pay attention. There feels like there's companionship in that. And he also used to do real-time recipes where in the podcast, he's inviting us over for dinner and he describes what he's making. And then we go to Trader Joe's to get the ingredients. And then we go back to his home. And this is all narrated, of course, in the podcast episode. And we make the meal together. Again, such a simple concept, but so intimate and wonderful. And again, he records all of these episodes in what he calls creaky, dulcet tones. So I can't get over how much content he creates. And he's also very generous with sharing his creative process. I've learned a lot about podcasting just from listening to his podcast. So he talks about how he's created a closet in his apartment that he records from. He's shared before that each episode can take anywhere between 20 and 40 hours to create because he writes them. So he goes into a creative process and then it needs to be recorded and edited. So he puts a tremendous amount of effort into the podcast and it really shows. And just so you know, I have a much simpler process with my podcast, and each episode for me takes, about 3 to 4 hours because it usually takes me about an hour to an hour and a half to to record the initial content, and then I have to edit it, which usually takes another 90 minutes or so. So you don't hear all my ums. So there are ums in here, but I edit a lot of them out. I also edit out this weird popping sound my house sometimes makes, this random pop. I edit out the helicopters or the traffic or the sirens that are going by. And it's not that I live in an extraordinarily noisy neighborhood, but this microphone picks up everything, including my stomach that gurgles. So I have to edit all of that out so I don't annoy you too much. But so that's the Sleep With Me podcast. Again, I love it. I've listened to it for years. I have my favorite episodes. And his podcast really taught me that a podcast could create a place of deep intimacy. That was one of the things that I loved so much about his podcast was I felt like I got to have a relationship with it. I should also mention that he has a wonderful listener-supported Facebook group that is moderated by the listeners. So he has a very active listener community, and they do a fantastic job of moderating it so that it remains positive and on purpose, which is fantastic. And I just love him. I admire him tremendously, and I'm grateful that he helped pave the way for so many of us to also do sleep podcasts. But he's the one who got me started in listening, and for many years his was the only podcast that I listened to because there was such a deep catalog. I could keep going back to episodes again and again and listening and loving them all over again. He also does these episodes, he calls it With My Neighbor Ray, So Ray's a character he plays, and he sort of styled that on Mr. Rogers. What if you had a really friendly neighbor? And his episodes usually, Ray and Andrew Ackerman uses the pen name of Scooter, Dear Scooter, in the podcast. So he talks about himself as Scooter in the podcast. So Ray and Scooter go on trips to Disneyland or Disney World and talk to us about the hotel that they're staying in and the rides they go on and the meals they have. And I have no desire to go to any of the Disneys. I don't want to be around that many people, but those are some of my favorite episodes that he does. Whenever he has a Ray episode, I'm so happy. And what was interesting is when I first started listening, I didn't like those episodes at all, but now I love them. And then he also writes serials, not as in, Special K serial, meaning episodic serials. So he has usually different storylines going. So a lot of his stuff is scripted as well. So again, he's really a creative powerhouse and brings a lot of variety to his podcast. So be sure to check out Sleep With Me. If you're looking for some other content, there are lots of episodes to listen to, and he does a great job with what he does. So thank you, Scooter. I love your podcast. I also learned about other sleep podcasts through Sleep With Me's Facebook listener group. Because every once in a while, they'll start a thread like, what else do you listen to for sleep podcasts? And so I'll share with you some of the others that I'm listening to. There's another wonderful sleep podcast called Get Sleepy, which is narrated by Thomas Jones and a variety of other storytellers. And this is a scripted program, so they write the script ahead of time, and then they take us on a journey. The production values are really high. The music is beautiful. They do a great job of lulling us into a quiet, serene space. Some of the episodes have a fantasy quality to them. Some of them are historical. For instance, I'm looking right now, and one of their recent episodes that I actually am looking forward to listening to, the title is Fall Asleep in Fez. So follow two friends as they explore the many layers of historical Fez, Morocco. And they're just lovely. There's another one which is the Country Antiques Market. So wander through rooms filled with antique furniture and other fascinating items during a visit to a rural shop. And their episodes tend to be somewhere between 40 minutes and an hour. And again, with the music, they sometimes have ambient sound effects like rain or birds. They're just lovely. They release 2 episodes a week, one on Monday and one on Wednesday. And then they also have a subscription platform. So I don't know how many episodes they keep on their free platform, but after a time they go behind a paywall. But they still have quite a lot of content available, and I absolutely love them. The company that produces Get Sleepy also has other sleep podcasts that they produce. One is The Sleepy Bookshelf, which in this moment of this recording, I am presently deep into their reading of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And my obsession with their reading of Jane Eyre is in part what guided me to make this the theme for tonight's episode. So the way that Sleepy Bookshelf works is they read a book from the beginning to the end over as many episodes as it takes. Again, the production value is really high. The music is beautiful and can run in and out of the episode. The woman, Elizabeth, who narrates, she speaks slowly and she just has a beautiful voice for reading the books. Some of the books they've read have been The Wizard of Oz, Pride and Prejudice, and they're reading Jane Eyre right now. Now, Jane Eyre is not a book I have read before. I don't know. I think it's the kind of book they assign in high school or college, and my thought was it was one I would read reluctantly. I don't know. I haven't really been into that time of English literature. And I reluctantly one night started listening to this. I couldn't go to sleep, and I don't know. I had tried some of my other sleep podcasts and hadn't really come upon one that was the flavor I needed for that night. And I started listening to Jane Eyre. And here's the thing I've discovered about my relationship with sleep podcasts. There are the kinds of episodes I want to listen to when I'm just getting ready to go to sleep for the night. But then I have different episodes I like to listen to when I'm up at 3 a.m. and I hope I'm going to go back to sleep at some point. And I remember finding Jane Eyre during one of my 3 a.m. forays into finding something that I could listen to. And I think I had listened to an episode in the middle of the book. And at some point I decided to just start from the beginning. There are going to be 34 episodes of Jane Eyre, so that's a lot of content. And I found myself getting really enchanted with this book that I had not read before, nor had I seen any of the movies or TV series that had been created from it. Here's something interesting that I learned about the book Jane Eyre. It was one of the first, if not the first, novels written that gave inner narrative to the main character. So in the book Jane Eyre, if you've never read it, it's from her point of view, and she shares her feelings and her thoughts and her experiences from the first person perspective. And my understanding is it is one of the first books written in that style that gives a psychological insight to the motivation of the character. And it's a wonderful book, and I am presently obsessed with this series on the podcast Sleepy Bookshelf. I just finished episode 22, and it's taken me like 2 nights to get through it because I would listen to a little and then fall asleep. And I just finished it this morning. I had listened to that episode probably 3 times in the wee hours of this morning because I kept falling asleep. And then when I'd wake up, I would go back to the last part I remembered and listen some more. And so I'll have 12 more episodes to listen to. And I think that's the power of a sleep podcast, is it takes us into a different world and a different experience. And I have to say, I am absolutely in love with Jane Eyre now. The language, the insight from the characters. And I went back and I watched one of the Jane Eyre movies, and then there was a 4-part series that was available on Amazon Prime. And they were good, but I recognize how hard a book this would be to translate because we're missing out on her inner dialogue, her inner conversation, which is such an enormous part of this book. So I can't wait to get through the rest of it. I actually might go back and read it. Not that reading is an astonishing act, but I'm so thoroughly enjoying this that I'm enchanted by the world of Jane Eyre now. So that's the Sleepy Bookshelf, and if you're looking for something really good to get into, I highly recommend their episodes on Jane Eyre, although I will say if you've never read Jane Eyre before, it starts off pretty darkly. She has a very difficult childhood, so those episodes are kind of, can be hard to take on for an empath's heart, but it's really juicy and good. So that's the Sleepy Bookshelf. Okay, the next podcast I want to tell you about is Sleepy with Otis Gray. So Otis reads from public domain books. And so the concept is very simple. And something that I learned from his podcast is that simple works. I love his podcast. I love it. And there is something about his voice. There's something about his timbre. The pace at which he reads puts me right to sleep. I rarely can stay awake during one of his episodes. There is something so cozy about his podcast. So he publishes on Sundays. So he only publishes one a week. So on Sundays, I'm so excited. I pull up my podcast app to see what he's reading from. So one of his most recent one is he just read from Anna Karenina, which I have never read. So I will be gladly listening to that after I get through Jane Eyre, because right now I'm all about Jane Eyre. But then I will go to Anna Karenina. He's read from Journey to the Center of the Earth. He's also just read from the Thesaurus or from the dictionary. He has read from Agatha Christie. And it was his podcast that introduced me to the books of Edith Nesbit. He had read from The Amulet, and I found it so enchanting that I also read from Edith Nesbit in this podcast. She writes children's books that I love. So I just get delighted every Sunday to see what he's reading to us this week. Some of the stuff I don't listen to if I'm not big on mysteries and things like that, so I may not listen to those episodes. But for instance, he has at the end of April, he published his 200th episode, and it's 2 hours of Agatha Christie. And so I've returned to that episode more than once because I always like when there are longer episodes because it gives me more time in which to fall asleep. So that is Sleepy with Otis Gray. The next podcast I want to share with you is not designed to be a sleep podcast, but is well loved in the sleep podcast community. It is called History of English Podcast. And I remember when I started listening to it, I'm like, what is sleepy about this? It's not that it's boring. It's interesting. But somehow the subject matter and the way it's shared helps put me to sleep. So it's by Kevin Stroud, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And he's just published his 159th episode. And what I'm so fascinated by is I had this illusion that if somehow time travel was real, which it's not, well, it is, you know what I mean? Not in the way we think of with the Doctor Who's TARDIS, right? if we found ourselves in England in 1400 or 1500, even if they were speaking English, we probably could not understand them because the dialect and the vocabulary are so different than the English we use now. And I have learned so much from this podcast. This happens to be a podcast that I typically don't listen to right before I go to sleep. But I love it at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning when I'm awake and I'm just trying to give my mind something to do in the hopes that at some point I will drift off again. So I highly recommend the History of English podcast. It is fascinating, but not too exciting to keep you awake, and an incredible body of work by Kevin Stroud. I mean, incredible what he shares with us. So, highly recommend that. Another podcast that I love to listen to is Sleepytime Tales, boring bedtime stories for all ages. I don't remember this gentleman's name. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, sorry. It's David. David Couto, Couto. And he also reads public domain material. And he's got just a wonderful voice again. The tenor of his voice and the rhythm with which he tells his stories always puts me to sleep. He does early science fiction. He's done Little Women, Secret Garden, and I love his episodes. So again, he is one that I always look forward to something new showing up from him. So that's Sleepytime Tales. Another one that I find enchanting is Nothing Much Happens. It is a scripted series, so she writes her scripts, and they're lovely. The only reason I don't listen to that one when I'm going to sleep is her episodes are shorter. They're only about 30 minutes, and she repeats the story. So those work for me in the middle of the night if I'm just looking for something short. But I typically don't listen to that one when I'm going to sleep because I always feel like I have to rush to go to sleep, which doesn't work for me very well. But I love her podcast and her voice and the stories that she tells. I find them very enchanting. And then there are quite a lot of podcasts that include meditations. It might sound strange because I do a lot of guided meditations as a practitioner, but I do not do well listening to them to go to sleep. I feel like I'm too connected to the action, that part of my brain that's like, okay, now I'm on a path. Okay, look at the trees. Okay, I'm looking at the trees. I find that guided meditations don't work for me to go to sleep. I need something that I can listen to passively. So that's why there is really not much in the way of guided meditation in this podcast, even though I do them quite often as a practitioner, because as a listener, I don't do well falling asleep to them. But if you do like guided meditations, I'll give you a couple of recommendations. One is called Sleep Cove, and it's a really nice blend of guided meditations and reading public domain materials and scripted content. So for instance, as I just look at some of their most current episodes, they have one episode where they're reading from Alice in Wonderland. Another episode is exploring Venice's canals at twilight. Now we get a sleep meditation to fulfill your potential. And then in the next episode, they're reading from the Father Brown Mysteries. So it's a really nice blend, and I really like their production values and the voice. So that's a good one, Sleep Cove. And then if you're looking for more meditations, just look for Sleep Sounds. Sleep Sounds is a company that does a lot of different sleep podcasts, and they have a lot of different sleep meditation podcasts that you can listen to. For instance, there's one called Sleep Sounds Meditation for Women, and some of their episodes are Chakra Healing Lullaby, Gentle Waves Bring Deep Sleep, Airy Dreams in the Mountain, Soft Midnight Noise and Synthesizer. So podcasts with a lot of ambient sound to help you fall asleep. Another one of their podcasts is called Sleep Meditation for Women, and some of their episodes are meditation to melt the worries away, clearing away a difficult day, restful alpha brainwaves, a meditation head to toe relaxation. So lots of content. And if you're looking for other podcasts to help you rest, I recommend going into your favorite podcast app and looking for keywords of sleep or sleepy bedtime stories. And I will say, this is going to be my 55th episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, so you have 55 hours of content from yours truly now. And still finding my style and my rhythm. And if there is something that I'm bringing forward, if there are aspects of my podcast that you love, that you prefer, or that you would like to experience, I am totally open to hearing from you. So please feel free to reach out the next time you're awake. But in the meanwhile, I hope you're drifting off into a good night's rest. I'm so deeply grateful for you, and thank you for letting me share with you my love of sleep podcasts. I'm so grateful to all the content creators out there who have devoted their creativity and their life force to creating content that helps us rest. And I am grateful to be here doing that for you right now. So I wish you sweet dreams. I wish you blessings of rest. And I look forward to connecting again soon. Thank you.